All right, thank you very much, Leanne. As you know, this is Braille Trail Reader, first steps for you and your emerging Braille readers. So let's talk now about what we're going to be doing today. We'll introduce our demonstrators. We'll go through the objectives. We'll go through the Braille Trail Reader overview, reviewing the basic layout, the types of files used with students, the Windows Transfer app and file sharing options that it offers, the Braille Trail Reader menu overview, getting started with a student, opening a document, navigation commands, thumb keys, writing, and wrap up. So as you can see, we have a tremendous amount that we're going to go through today. All right, so our main presenter is going to be Jill Dunnaway from AIDB, which is Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind. She is an assistive technology trainer / specialist. Also from AIDB is Dennis Gilliam, special education / testing / outreach / special projects. I would not want to write that on a business card. And Dennis, if you would tell us about the Center for Assistive Technology Training.
Thank you, Paul. So the Center for Assistive Technology Training is a collaborative effort between the American Printing House and the Alabama Institute for Deaf and Blind. Why in the world would Alabama be in 9 states? That's a great question, Paul. It's not really a question, it's just a federally funded appropriation because we recognize that a lot of teachers, TVIs, and students with visual impairments need not only the devices, but some training that goes with that device. So the Center for Assistive Technology Training is that effort to get devices in the hands of all of those students and those TVIs and families. They also, we also have that opportunity to leave some of those devices with the students so they don't have to check them out with their school and it has to stay in a desk drawer or in a cabinet somewhere, which oftentimes happens. There's a lot of things that we do offer and a lot of that is online now. And we provide those training and devices to blind, visually impaired TVIs, students across the Southeast. The states are listed there, but they're Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, and South Carolina. If there's any question about what we do in general or how those devices might be accessed, we do have an email account, and it is catt@aidb.org. And we're so appreciative of our partnership with the American Printing House. Dr. Metter has been a great partner and champion throughout this, and also Leanne has been the one that's really tied all this together. So we're just appreciative of the partnership and all the effort.
All right, thank you so much, Dennis. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing today. We're going to review and download the installation process of the Braille Trail Reader transfer file software. We're going to identify the 4 steps to transfer a file from a PC to the Braille Trail Reader. We'll identify the 2 file types supported by the software and the Braille Trail. We're going to locate, open, and read the file that's been transferred to the Braille Trail Reader. Identify at least 3 benefits of using the thumb keys to teach Braille to emerging Braille readers, and identify at least 3 benefits of using the input keys to teach Braille to emerging Braille readers. So as you can see, it's a full webinar today. Let's go over some of the frequently asked questions that people often have about this device. Cost is $995. It is quota eligible. There is 14 Braille cells. Weight is ½ pound. Size is 6.5 by 4 by 1. 8 gigs of onboard memory and no speech. And what is included in the box? Of course, you get the Braille Trail Reader Limited Edition. It's got a durable carrying case with a lanyard, the micro USB charging cable, the print quick start guide, the Braille command summary, and a decorative Braille bug sticker. And with that out of the way, it's time now to turn this over to Jill Dunnaway.
Hello, my name is Jill Dunnaway. I'm one of the assistive technology trainer specialists here at the Center for Assistive Technology Training at the Alabama Institute for Deaf and Blind. Prior to that, I was the assistive technology teacher at the Alabama School for the Blind for 15 years, and I am really excited about showing you the features of the Braille Trail Reader today.
All right, thank you very much, Jill. So can you start by talking to us about the layout of the device?
Absolutely. Okay. I start by having my hands laid out properly on the device. I have my thumbs on the space bar, which allows my fingers to fall very naturally and easily on the Braille keyboard. So it's laid out just almost exactly like the Braille keyboard on a Perkins Braille writer. I have dots 1, 2, and 3 going left on the left side, dots 4, 5, and 6 on the right, and there's a joystick in the middle. Then past dot 3, I have the backspace key. Past dot 6, I have the enter key. Then coming toward me, I have the 14 touch cursor sensors that are extremely handy when editing documents, and we'll get to that. Then coming closer to me, I have the actual Braille display itself. Then on the front edge of the device, I have our 4 awesome thumb keys, and those are previous, left, right, and next by default. On the right edge of the device, I have a micro USB cable that's used to charge the device, and it's also used to transfer files to between the computer and the Braille Trail Reader. Going away from me on that left edge, I will run into the power button. On the back edge of the device, I have a switch that controls whether the unit is in applications mode, and in applications mode, it's used as pretty much a standalone device. If I move that switch to the right, that's going to allow me to go into remote mode, which will allow the Braille Trail to be used as a Braille display with my screen reader, and that works whether you're running iOS device, whether it's Android, whether it's PC, Mac, anything like that. The Braille Trail can be your Braille display as well. I'm going to switch that back to the left.
Okay, Jill, tell us what the joystick is there for.
The joystick is just another way to navigate. We can move up, down, left, right, and then press the center to do the same thing as activating the enter key. You can just do it quickly without having to move your fingers as much. It's a neat feature.
Thank you. Can you tell us about a couple of the standalone applications on the device?
Sure. The primary one that you'll use is the Notes application, and that's where you can write documents, anything like that, and you can create anything you want. You can do lists of the states. You can do any kind of worksheet you might need to use with the students. You can do spelling lists, anything like that.
Now, I'm sure you've had to show a lot of students different ways to do this. So can you give us a good tip or trick so they make sure they get this plugged in correctly, that USB cord?
It is a little bit tricky. The main thing that you want to keep in mind, especially if you're visually impaired or blind, is that those teeth need to be facing downward. Everything's going to USB-C now, and that's not an issue, but you do need to be careful with those micro USBs. There we go.
So maybe the student could put a little bit of puff paint or something on the one spot of the cable so they can remember it. I know at that age I would have had trouble with that.
They're very tactily. A puff paint would be great to start with, yes.
All right, so let's take a moment and open the chat. And if people have any questions about those basic things of the device, this would be a good time to ask those questions.
One of the questions is, with speech possibly being an important thing for a beginning Braille reader, what about speech with this device?
Speech is not present in applications mode. However, if you are using it in remote mode with your screen reader on a computer or Android or iOS tablet or phone, then speech would be available to you, and that's just your choice whether you have this. The screen reader has to be running, but it doesn't have to be talking. So you can use speech if you're using it as a remote Braille display.
And how is this different from a Braille note?
It is, for one thing, it's only 14 cells of Braille. The device itself is much smaller. And it doesn't have a lot of the features that the Braille Note does. It does have the basic notes application like we've seen. But there are things on the Braille Note that are not on this. But the biggest thing is it's a lot smaller, a lot more portable. You've got 14 cells, and you can very easily stick it in a purse or book bag or whatever you want to do.
Does a child have to know all the letters in Braille before using the Braille Trail Reader? And then what are the prerequisite skills? And I think you're going to head that direction. But one more question was, does it have a travel strap for walking?
Let's see if you. It does have a strap attached to the lanyard. Can you see that?
We can see that. And it does have a case, but for viewing, it was easier for us to show the
Yes,
device
it does
without
have
the case.
Yes, correct. It does have a case as well.
Okay, I'm going to let you get going.
Okay.
Were we gonna screen share now, or is this a poll question? I guess we're gonna screen share. Okay, let's talk, Jill, about some of the files that you use with students with the Braille Trail Reader. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those?
Absolutely. The two file types supported on the Braille Trail Reader are TXT files, and that's really important. It cannot support Microsoft Word files, docs, or docx's. It has to be TXT or BRF, which is an electronic Braille format. Those are the two formats that the device supports. The only two.
Thank you for that. So now, with that in mind, can you talk to us about some of the different files that you might use with your students?
Absolutely. They might need to do a list of sight words. They might need to do an activity talking about the different states. Anything you can think of. I have a lot of students who are really into creative writing. They like to use it in that capacity too.
Can you
It's
do me a
very versatile.
favor and repeat those two file types again?
Absolutely. That is txt.txt file extension and .brf, which is an electronic Braille file. .txt and .brf.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a file that you've used in the past that you wanted to show us, right?
Right. And I will do that. It's just a very
While she's getting that set up, I have an actual poll question to ask all of you. I'd like to know if you are currently teaching the slate and stylus with your students. So it's a yes or no. If it's yes, then what age did you start? Did you start 5 to 7 years old, 8 to 11 years old, 12 to 15-year-old, or other? And I will open the chat briefly and let you put that other in there while Jill is getting it switched to be able to see JAWS at work. Again, do you teach the slate and stylus?
okay.
And if you do, what age do you start teaching it? And I'm still seeing some of those answers come in. And if you actually did and you have an other age to start it at, you're welcome to let us know. Older adult blind individuals, I can see that. Okay, I'm going to stop the poll and just let you see the results just from the field and the people in here. 68% do not teach the slate and stylus. 32% do. And if they did, the majority of people were introducing it at 5 to 7 is their age range. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jill.
Okay. So we are talking about very young students. And so I have just a very simple list of spelling words. And remember that this does have to be in TXT format. You can create it in Microsoft Word, but when you're done, make sure that you save that as a TXT. And it's just a very simple list of rhyming spelling words that a first grader or so might be working on. So we have things like bat, cat, hat, mat, things like that. Just an option for the student to put it on their Braille Trail Reader and read it electronically and get used to that concept of using a Braille display instead of using the hard copy embossed Braille.
So you like to use short, simple files with your students then,
With the young ones, yes. And you know, the files get progressively more complex as the students are learning, yes. But I would start with basics. This would be for, you know, kindergarten or first grader, that age range.
All right, thank you. So now let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about that Windows Transfer app from Humanware. So
Okay.
if you could tell us what it is and what you do with it.
Okay, that is an application from Humanware that allows you to transfer files from the computer to your Braille Trail or from the Braille Trail to the computer. It works both ways. But again, there's only two top file types are the TXT and BRF. That is a proprietary software that you have to download from the Braille Trail product page on the APH website. And you do have to connect the Braille Trail with the micro USB cable that we talked about to your computer to be able to use that application as well. The Braille Trail has to be connected.
Okay, so we go to the Braille Trail page and
Go
we
under
find
features. It's under features, and you'll find a link to download the file transfer software.
it. And I think we've included that for everyone so that you can download that. I install it. Anything unusual? Will anyone possibly need any permissions to open that file?
It's possible, depending on the way your IT people have your computer set up in your school system. So if you run into any issues with it, then I would check with the IT.
I think you told me it's a zip file, correct?
It is a zip file, so you will have to extract it and then install it.
All right, thank you for that. So since you already have the file, now can you talk to us about the different file sharing options that we have?
Sure. We can add it to the PC pane. We can add it to the PC pane and transfer in one step. We can connect the device, disconnect the device. It's very versatile software.
Okay. Can you demonstrate that for us a little bit?
Absolutely. Okay, I am now in the Braille Trail file transfer application, and I don't have anything on the Braille Trail yet. The first thing that I need to do is connect my Braille Trail to the micro USB. Now we are ready to tell the Braille Trail to connect to the software. There are menu options for that, but I'm just going to use Control T.
Can you tell me again what that control was? Control what?
The keyboard command is Control T. Control T is the keyboard shortcut to connect the Braille Trail to the computer.
Okay,
Now you type that on the Braille Trail itself?
No, on the computer.
On the computer, okay.
Correct, on the computer.
Or they could go through the menu that's open with that file.
Mm-hmm. So I'm connected now. My computer told me that. And my Braille display says transfer mode. So now I'm ready to add a file to that pane. I'm going to add to PC pane. I'm going to do it this way first, but as you get more comfortable with the software, you feel free to use that option to add to PC pane and transfer in one step. I'm just going to show you how this works really quickly.
So you're searching through your PC right now, just like
Yes,
you would
I
do
went through
any
my
kind
list
of
of-
an
Correct.
upload or download on and that's very normal. Right?
That's correct. I just I just got a dialog with the list of my files, and I just navigated to that spelling list. Okay, now I need to tell it what kind of Braille I want to use. I can use literary Braille, or I can use computer Braille. Now, literary Braille is what we're going to want here. And I can also choose whether I'm using UEB, which is the current Braille grade, or it can use eBay, which is the older English version of Braille. Now, another really cool thing too, if you're a language nerd like me, is it supports lots of different languages too. And UEB is what I want. Okay, now I'm going to use the space bar to select it. Okay, now, again, you can go through the menus, but just like I used the space on the keyboard to select that file, I'm going to use F5, function key 5 on my computer keyboard to transfer it to the Braille Trail Reader. I'm going to hit that F5 key now. Now, at the moment, I've been having a little bit of an issue with this. What's going to happen is I'm not getting a progress bar like I should, and it's really interesting because if I do this with a BRF file, a Braille file, I get that message. So I'm going to give it just a second, and then I'm going to tell it to abort because the file should still show up on my Braille Trail Reader.
So what's a safe amount of time to wait before you hit abort?
I would say maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, not long. And now we can confirm that that is on my Braille Trail Reader.
So what are you reading on your Braille Trail Reader right now? Does it have the file name there?
Not yet because it's still connected to the computer, so I'm still seeing transfer mode right now.
And so what we're seeing on the screen on the left-hand side is the file from the computer, and on the right-hand side is the file has now moved over to the device. So the left-hand side is the PC file and the right-hand side is the reader files.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do the exact opposite. You can move a file from there back to the PC with the same file app, correct?
Yeah, yes.
All right, perfect. I think at this point,
And you can put as many files in that list as you want to also, and you can select more than one and transfer them at one time if you want to, but I'm just doing one for the purposes of this demonstration, but you can add several files to that PC pane.
Perfect. So I think at this point, we're going to take a moment and open the chat, see if we have any questions.
So we had a couple questions from before. Can the Braille Trail Reader be attached to a printer?
No, it cannot, but you can use that file that you transferred. You can print it. If you've transferred it from the Braille Trail to the computer, you can print it that way.
Okay. What do you think would be the earliest age you feel a student would be able to handle the Braille Trail Reader?
I always introduce my students to them very young. When I taught AT at the School for the Blind those 15 years, I had a rotation of elementary classes that would come through. And okay. I would even introduce my first graders to a device like this, just so they get the idea of what the device is.
The other question is, it sounds like the device might be geared for younger beginning Braille users. Is that correct?
It's really good for younger Braille readers, but I've used it with junior high age kids that I've been teaching Braille to that we're losing significant amount of vision and we're transitioning to Braille. It's a very versatile device. I've used it with a wide range of students. Because it supports BRF files, if you have a Bookshare account, you can put books on it. Now, I wouldn't do a long book, especially with a younger kid, because you've only got 14 sets of Braille. So.
Okay. Does the computer have to be a PC, or is it Mac compatible as well?
I don't believe it supports Mac.
Okay. What is the difference between the literary Braille as opposed to the computer Braille?
Okay. Literary Braille is what I use for normal, just reading and writing literary stuff. If I am doing something online, like writing a website address or a URL or a website address or email, anything like that, I need to switch to computer Braille. And main thing is to remember is if you're using computer Braille, you don't use any contractions, write everything out. And then the symbols are slightly different. For example, in literary Braille, the period is dots 256. In computer Braille, the dot is dots 46.
Okay. When you were transferring that short spelling list, was it going to be transferred in grade 1 or grade 2, or can it switch?
By default, it's going to be grade 2.
By default is grade 2. Okay.
But like I said, if you're working with younger kids and they're still looking at their contractions, that's the situation where I might want to say, okay, I'm going to tell it to transfer this in computer Braille.
Okay. Is there a flash drive port in a Braille Trail Reader where you can transfer files?
There is not. The only port is the micro USB that charges it.
Okay.
And there's no SD port card either, like there is on the Orbit 20.
Okay. Trying to think if there's any others that I've missed in this process. They do want to see that now that you've gotten the spelling list, we can see the transfer on the computer screen. We now want to see what happens on the Braille Trail Reader, which is what I know you're getting to next. But I know you'll need to stop sharing your screen so we can put that
Yes,
Braille
just
Trail
1 second.
Yep, I'll let you do that. And while she's doing that, I have another question for you. What tool do you prefer to start teaching Braille writing? So your choices are the classic Perkins Brailler, a smart Brailler, an electronic Brailler, and our examples like a Mountbatten, a Braille note taker, such as like a Braille note, slate and stylus, or other. So what tool do you prefer to start teaching Braille writing?
All of these are wonderful devices for Braille writing, and they all have a place in our toolbox. But I would say that I would start with the good old Perkins.
Well, let's see what our audience is doing. You never know. And every student is a little different, so we realize
That's very
that.
true, and it absolutely depends on the student.
I'll let you run that through while she's pulling up that Braille Trail Reader, and we get to see those spelling lists because we all need to learn how to write the word cat and hat. Okay, I am going to end the poll, but thank you for asking. You're welcome to write it in the chat what you choose to use. 75% did say they're using the Perkins Classic to start teaching. 8% said Smart Brailler, 8% electronic Brailler, 1% Braille note taker, 4% start with a slate and stylus, and 3% said other. People were saying they love to start with the swing cell.
Oh yes, the swing cell is very handy.
Okay, let's see that spelling list.
Okay, I'm back on my Braille Trail Reader now, and the first item I come to in the Braille Trail Reader menu is the clock, so I'm going to use that far left thumb key, the next thumb key, to get to my notes application. From there, I'm going to go to Files, and there is my spelling list, and I have spelling list in uncontracted Braille here because this is a file name, an electronic file name, so those are always going to be in computer Braille. So I have spelling list .txt, and again, you may be able to see that that dot is 4/6 because again, we are doing computer Braille because it's a file name. And now here is my file spelling list. And I can navigate that and read all the way through and work with little ones to make sure they understand, okay, I can only see a few words here, but I know there's more. And that's where those thumb keys come in handy. And we will definitely teach them about those thumb keys. So I can read the file all the way through. If I want to get back to the top of the file, I can do space with dots 1, 2, 3. Get to the bottom of the file, I can do space with dots 4, 5, 6.
All right, that's great. So thank you for showing us how to get into that file. Now you started with the clock, so I guess that's part of the menu. So can you show us a little bit about that menu structure?
Sure, let me get back out of here. Okay, first I'm in the menu is the clock. I'm going to use my next thumb key. That gets me to notes. And then there are other options too. Like here's an important one. How do I know how much battery I've got? I'm going to check that. And mine's at 99%, so we're good. And
Now, how did you check that?
okay.
I know you moved to battery
I
with your
moved to
thumb
battery
key.
and I hit enter. And when I hit the enter key, the next thing that I see is the battery status there, 99%.
And anything else
And
in the
then
menu we should pay attention to?
there's a stopwatch that's neat to play with. The kids always like to notice the seconds ticking by on the Braille display. That's a lot of fun. There are options for the cursors to control how sensitive they are, and that depends on everybody's different with that too, as how much strength do they need to move their fingers to activate those cursors. Now, um, uh, those files that I transferred to the Braille note, that spelling list, important point to note is that that is not editable at this point. So the student can't do anything with that list except read it. And settings is an important one. Then there are a few things here. One of the main ones I would do with young kids, I have options like auto power down. But one of the main things that I would do with young kids is there's an option to control whether your Braille display shows new line indicators. And with the young ones, I would turn that off. Those are the main things in the menu. There's an about where you can check your serial number, see if there's a firmware upgrade, things like that. But your notes is your biggest one, and then knowing how to check your battery. And a few options like how sensitive the touch cursors are and making sure whether you want that new line indicator to show up.
All right, thank you. So now we really want you to demonstrate your knowledge and expertise with us. So let's say you have a new student that's going to start with you. So can you show us some of the things you would do when starting off with a new student?
Sure. The first thing that I would do is make sure that their fingers are laid out properly. And this keyboard is nice and ergonomic. It's going to be pretty comfortable and easy for the students to use. Make sure that their thumbs are on that space bar because then their fingers will fall in place on the keyboard like it should. Make sure they understand, okay, we've got dots 1, 2, 3 here, 4, 5, 6 here. We've got our joystick in the middle that we can go up, down, left, right, and select. Now we have extra keys. We've got a dot 6 past dot 3, which is we have a dot 7, our backspace key past dot 3, and our enter key, which we call dot 8 past the dot 6.
Now, if you get a student that comes and says, wait, there's these extra keys on here, what are some of the things you tell them about those?
I would say, you know, how, like on the Perkins Brailler, you have your line space and backspace keys. Those are in those same positions. I would compare it to that. And then I would get into those thumb keys because that's really how you control the Braille display. Get into orienting them to the previous, left, right, and next thumb keys. And teach them that the left and right are your penning keys to keep reading.
Your left and right are your what keys?
They call it panning to control what the Braille display shows to pan left or pan right.
Pan, thank you.
Pan, yes.
Okay, thank you. So you have shown us a little bit about opening documents when you open that spelling list, but let's say now you're gonna teach a student how to open a document. Can you walk us through that process like you would with a student?
Okay.
And same with navigating that document once it's open.
Okay. I am at my main menu. I'm going to use that next thumb key to get to notes. Okay, if you got notes, okay, let's hit enter. Then I'm going to come down from local to files, hit enter on that, and there is my list. And remember that this is not in contracted Braille because it's an electronic file name. I'm going to hit enter. And then let's make sure that our fingers are at that far left spot so that I can start reading. You'll notice too that there's an extra little dot at the cursor. And that takes a little bit getting used to. It's the same concept as the insertion point and cursor in a word processor. So I would work with the student and make sure they get, okay, don't let that extra dot under the period there through for you.
Can they turn that off if they really don't like it?
So spelling list. And I can just read right through with my thumb keys. Hit my right thumb key when I get to the last word on the display, which is that, and then hat, that, and keep reading. So just work with them a lot to get that concept down of, okay, I only see 2 words here. How do I keep going? It's that left thumb key. What if I need to go back? It's that left thumb key, then right thumb key goes forward, the left one goes back. Just to pan to what I'm seeing on the Braille display.
So you've shown us the left and the right thumb key, but I know the first time I saw a display like this, I got a little confused because there was 4 thumb keys.
Yes.
So how do you explain to them the difference in those 4 thumb keys and when to use the first 2 as opposed to the ones in the middle?
Okay. The ones in the middle are the controls I use just when I'm reading through a document. The previous and next are used more when I'm moving through menus. That can be the same thing as backspacing or selecting a menu item too. So, but really focus on those inner 2 just for normal reading, and the previous and next are more for navigating.
So do you teach them a little bit about the menu too, or do you really focus mostly on documents? Like, are they going to learn how to open their own documents?
Once they get familiar with the device and the way it works, yeah, sure. I would have them absolutely go to the notes application and find that document and open it. You know, if I'm starting, again, we're starting with a young student, so that first grader, you know, it's going to take a bit of work before they're able to do that, but absolutely.
So you'll open it, you'll get them to the place they need to be, and then you'll just tell them how to get through the words.
Right, right. Using those thumb keys, going to the top with 1, 2, space 1, 2, 3, bottom with space 4, 5, 6, just getting them used to the idea.
So you said this spelling list was one that they can't write in right now.
No, they can't.
How do you change that if you wanted them to then write those words 4 times next to the one they read?
That's the document you transfer here is not editable. If I created that spelling list on the memory of the Braille Trail itself in my notes application, right on the Braille Trail, then it would be. But this was the file that I brought over from the computer.
Okay, that's good. They will need to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you've shown us how to find a document. You've shown us how to read it. Now, can you show us how to write a brand new document or a note?
Sure. I'm gonna go back to my menu. I'm gonna go to notes again. And go to local. And now I'm gonna do a space within to create a new note. And I see my cursor showing me where my text will go when I start typing. And that cursor is a concept, you know, that you need to learn if you're using word processor. Again, it's the same concept here. I like writing on my Braille Trail, and I think that your students will love it. So
Now, once you've written that, what can you do with that?
well, since I have created that document, I can use my touch cursor keys to, if I made a mistake, I can move in where I want to be to make a mistake. There we go. And like, for example, if I wanted to get rid of that comma, I can backspace and get rid of it. But I wanted it, so I'm going to put it back. And that's where the commands to navigate by word, things like that, can come in handy too. For example, if I want to go to the next word, I'm going to do space with dot 5. Previous word is space with dot 2. And those commands are very consistent too. When you work with the kids, okay, well, what's on the opposite side of the Braille cell from dot 5? Dot 2, right? Okay, well, 2 is less than 5, so if 5 goes forward, then 2 is going to go back. Same thing with going to the top. Okay, space 1, 2, 3 goes to the top. What's on the other side of the cell from 1, 2, 3? It's 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3 comes first, so that's going to go up, and 4, 5, 6 is going to go down. Things like that.
Now, can you use those commands with documents that you send over to the Braille Trail Reader, or only with documents that you write?
Just ones that you write.
All right, so we've seen how to read, we've seen how to write, we've seen how to do all that. So I guess at this point, this would be a good time now to take some more questions about any of these topics that you might have.
We had a lot come in. Amy, would you like to read a few of them?
Absolutely. Let me go. And so some of the questions that we had, one of them had to do with what would be a reason to use this device, the Braille Trail, over, say, the new Chameleon?
Okay. It just has some different features about it. It has the touch cursors instead of the touch cursor buttons. It's lighter and smaller. It has 14 cells of Braille instead of 20, so that's something to think about with your little ones. You might want to start them with something like this and then move up to the Chameleon. But I absolutely love the Chameleon too. They're both great devices.
Right. So there was someone very observant in looking at the actual layout of the device, and they just asked a very common question that others might be wondering too. Why does this particular device use 8 dots in the cell?
Okay. 8 dots goes back to the concept of computer Braille. It's so that you can write things like that @ sign in an email address or things like that. It's mainly for computer Braille situations.
Okay, and here's another question. Can this device, the Braille Trail, be also used with a Chromebook?
I believe that the Chromebox is one of the supported screen readers.
Were there any other questions that had popped up in the chat box in the last few moments, Leanne?
There are. So can the written text that you just wrote, like you like the Braille Trail Reader, be transferred back to the PC?
Yes, that process would be the same. You would
So
connect. You would
those
connect.
notes.
Yes, the process would be the same. You would connect the Braille Trail Reader, but instead of adding to PC pane, you would add it to the Braille Trail to the. You would add that from the Braille Trail to the PC pane and transfer it that way.
Okay. Is it possible to enter a partially contracted document for a beginning learner if you created it on the Braille Trail?
Okay, the best advice I would give you there is to have act like you're writing in computer Braille and not writing contractions, and that way that when you get to a contraction you want to use, you can write it. I would do that individually.
Okay. For a student that has read embossed Braille, which sensitivity level would you suggest starting with?
I would start with a pretty high level intensity on the Braille display. I think that they seem to do a lot better with that. They like the crisp Braille. And navigating with those thumb keys instead of tracking on an embossed page of Braille does take some getting used to. It's a totally different skill.
Okay.
And you've got to be careful too, because a lot of the times if they get used to something like this, they don't want to go back to that embossed Braille page and have to do tracking and stuff. You got to make sure they don't lose those tracking skills, because those are still very important.
So here is an additional question that we can throw at you that piques a lot of curiosity. Can a book be transferred to the device, or is it limited in storage? And I think where that question might be stemming from is thinking about utilizing Bookshare and taking a file on.
You absolutely can use Bookshare. With my older kids, that I did it with my younger ones too, some, but you keep those books shorter. But absolutely, you can use books from Bookshare. You could transfer them using that same PC app. You know, that would just be a BRF file instead of a TXT file, and that's the only difference.
Very good. And I think one other final question that we can ask at this time, that is a burning question from probably many teachers at schools. Can this be used with Google Documents and Google Forms?
Okay, it can synchronize to a Google account, but as far as specifically using inbox and forms, you would be better off if you're wanting to do that. If you use it as a Braille display, absolutely. If you're connected to your Chromebook, your iPad, or your computer, you could use it as a remote Braille display and it would totally work. Not the internal features itself, but you could use it as your Braille display when you're using Google Docs or Classroom or anything like that.
Okay. Is there something new with the joystick? Was there an update about the joystick? Someone thinks they heard you say something about that.
No, the joystick is the same.
Okay.
It just up, left, up, down, left, right, and press it in the middle. The same thing as pressing enter. So it's really nice that there are different ways to select things.
If you receive the Braille Trail Reader and you live in a different time zone than what the time is set to, is this an easy change?
Yes, it's an easy thing to go in your settings menu and you can change the date and time.
Is that something you would be able to demonstrate quick or not?
Let's see.
If you can't, it is okay. We'll cover it some other time. And while she is doing that, before we work on wrapping up, I have to share our fun Friday question, which we forgot to do at the beginning. What do you call a carbonated beverage? Is it pop? Is it soda? Is it Coke? Is it cola? Is it soda pop? What do you call a carbonated beverage? We have to have our fun Friday question. Pop, soda, Coke, cola, or soda pop? Let's see what a majority of people said. I'm going to end the poll and share those results. 56% said soda. And if you think back to where most people are from, most of our people were from the South, so that does not surprise me. 26% pop, 15% Coke, 2% soda pop, and 1% cola. Were you able to get to that, Jill? If not, it's okay.
Yeah, no.
That's okay.
I'll do that another time.
That sounds good. Paul, did you have some final things you needed to end with?
Sure. Let me show everybody one last slide here. So here is our list of resources. I believe you've also received these in handouts. But in case you haven't, or just want to see them again, you can see here there's a link to the Braille Trail Reader page. That is where you will find that download link that Jill was showing us. We have here information on the user guide, our quick start guide, our command summary, which is a BRF file, the frequently asked questions, the file transfer software link that I was mentioning, and finally the firmware updater. There are a couple of different ways that you can update that firmware. Mostly though, if you go to the About menu, that will let you know. But that link there will also show you how to do that should you get a notification that it's time to update that firmware. That's all I have here. Is there anything else before we wrap up?
We have dropped in the chat a variety of links for you that are available, and there will be items going out in our follow-up email. Amy, did you see any other questions that came in that we could do? Jim or Jill, do you know the storage capacity on the device and about how many books it could store?
I'm thinking it's 16 gigs.
It's 8 gigs.
It's 8 gigs. And the good thing about those Berkshire books is they are not big files at all. So you'll have plenty of room for books.
Okay.
With 8 gigs. Those are a lot smaller files than audiobooks are. Those BRF files from Berkshire are not large files.
Okay.
Something else came to mind too that I wanted to make sure we clarified too. We said that the transfer app is only for Windows, but you definitely can use the Braille Trail Reader with a Mac. Is that right, Jill?
Yes.
It's just that the app is only for Windows.
Right. You
Okay.
can't transfer the files that way, but you can use it with as a Braille display for your Mac.
Okay, well, I would like to say thank you to everyone that has participated. Thank you, Jill, for a presentation on our Braille Trail Reader and our CAT team. This has been fabulous, and we can't wait to have you back again with us.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.